with so many difficult topics swirling around in society and so many polarizing views clashing, oftentimes I try to reflect on the people I've met throughout my life and the opinions that I've heard, the thoughts that I've heard, people that I've listened to, and I try to sort of break it down to why these things are happening. And I consider that one of the big reasons that there's so much animosity is because there's like this passion, this desire to fight against evil, which of course the definition of evil can get very skewed. I mean, I've heard it. I've thought oftentimes that we don't fight over good and evil. We fight over the definition of good and evil. And really, whoever wins the fight is the one who gets to define. And that's what it comes down to. I mean, if you think about the Holocaust, you knew I was going to bring it up, huh? You can't talk about, deep philosophy without bringing up the Holocaust and Hitler, and he thought he was doing good, right? Um, which I think is still a fair argument, but I don't want to go in that cliche route. But what I think would be interesting is, what if the Germans won? Well, then the Germans get to not just build the society based on their philosophy. I shouldn't say the Germans, the Nazis. The Nazis don't get to just decide how to build society on their philosophy. They get to decide how to educate people, and thus they get to decide the definition of good and evil. So it almost makes me wonder, if the Nazis won, the world would be, have a lot of similarities than it does today. It's just we would be saying, you know, those who oppose the Nazis were the evil ones, right? We would have been educated to think so. All right, so let's go back. I definitely believe that evil exists and good exists, and I'm not going to try to fight with that. But what I don't believe is that people are trying to create evil. Moreover, what I believe is that people's definition of good is what clashes. So when something arises that really stirs me up, and trust me, I get triggered like anybody else. That's why I'm making these videos, so I have an outlet, right? And when I come across something that just, oh my gosh, just feels like a punch in the face of something that just makes me want to just scream, I have to try to calm myself down. And I ask myself, okay, does such a philosophy, worldview, movement, does such a movement in society, is that caused because the person is evil? Hmm, I don't think so. Anytime I've judged somebody as evil, when I've taken time to hear their explanation, I realize, no, you have strong reasons for this. And it's just our definition of good is colliding. So I can't say that they're evil. I can't conclude that for myself. Are they stupid? Maybe that's what it is. Maybe they're just ignorant. Maybe they don't see what they're actually doing. Maybe they're just uneducated and they're actually dumb. Well, I can't really come to that conclusion either, because when my opposition is sometimes smarter than I am, how can I call them stupid, right? I certainly could not call them dumb unless I'm just really dumb. And if I'm that dumb, why am I even talking? Like, why would I even try to stand up against that? So I can't conclude that they're evil. That such a worldview that I oppose is happening because of evil. I can't conclude that it's happening because of ignorance or stupidity. And maybe you watching might have some more insight as to maybe more options. But the third option that to me seems to gravitate toward the truth for any time I recognize this opposition is this. There's a third option, which is, I'm just going to say the word trapped. We're trapped, and there's no way out. There's no way around this. No way around it. What on earth do I mean by that? Okay, well, let me bring up the topic of systemic racism. All right, so let's say there's a movement. Let's live in an imaginary world where there's a movement where one specific race feels that it's been so oppressed over the years that it is pushing for justice and equality in a fervent pace to just overthrow a lot of the aspects of society that has failed to see how this race has been oppressed. You wouldn't know any such society, would you? Okay, so systemic racism. The first thing I think we would need to do is ask ourselves, well, how do we define systemic racism? And this is already where it gets to be very polar opposite, because one side could say systemic racism is if there is a law that strictly forces racism. If there's a law that says, if you're of this race, you're not allowed to work at these places. You're not allowed to eat at these places. You're not allowed to, you have to sit in the back of the bus. You can't sit in the front of the bus if you're of this race. And there's a law for it. It's actually in writing. That's systemic racism. Okay. I can see that definition. And if that definition is accurate, then okay. There's a strong counter argument to perhaps such a movement that wants to fight against systemic racism. Because if that's the definition, then those who are fighting against systemic racism have nothing, because there is no law that says such a thing anymore. Okay, but what if there was a little bit more to the definition? What if the definition had to do with the inherent the inherent lopsided advantage that one has over another? I was just watching a series on Netflix about F1 racing, and I don't know much about racing, but I wanted to give it a try to learn. And there is these Ferrari and Mercedes seems to be always the top teams in F1 racing. And part of the reason for that is they have a massive budget. The more money you can put to your car, the faster your car will be. So you would think. And apparently Mercedes and Ferrari have double the budget as most of the other teams and the other cars. Well, it's like, well, what do you expect when you have that big of an advantage? Of course you're going to be winning. Okay, so let's bring that into maybe how does that apply to aspects of society? Well, let's say that there's somebody who is super wealthy. I'm talking billions of dollars. And, let's say there's an unfortunate situation where they injure a homeless person. A homeless person who doesn't have a dollar to their name. And this needs to go to court. Who do you think has the advantage? Now, of course, we'd like to think that this is America, where there's freedom, and we have built our judicial system so that neither has the advantage. Justice will win out. Well, perhaps, but perhaps there's also a conversation to be had about Those who can afford good lawyers would have an advantage over those who can't. And those who can afford great lawyers would have an even bigger advantage than those who can afford the best lawyers, which most people could never afford. They would have the biggest advantage. Now, could the underdog win? Sure. Is it likely? Hmm. That's an interesting question, because if we say, no, it's not likely, we'd have to admit that the judicial system has an inherent oppressive quality. But if we would deny that there's an advantage, are we really being honest with ourselves? So I could delve into this more, but you can see how could lead back into, well, what's the definition of systemic racism? Well, is there an inherent advantage that one has over another? Not that it's written in law, but that there's just an inherent aspect to it. Now let's say this video is gonna go a little bit long because I wanna talk about this point here. Let's say that, okay, we need to throw away all of the abstract, nebulous thinking and just stick to the definition that is written down. If it's not in the laws, then it's not systemic racism. It's not systemic oppression. Period. And let's say that that's accurate. Let's say the side who says that it's accurate. Just roll with me. Let's say it's indisputably accurate. Well, be that as it may, does that solve the issue? Is there an issue to be solved? And even if such a statement is accurate, to say that the systemic racism doesn't exist, systemic oppression doesn't exist, even if that's accurate, does that solve the problem that's going on? Is there a problem going on? And to ignore that is where I feel that people would get trapped. So, would such a philosophy propagate because somebody is evil? I rule that out. I rule that out. How am I going to do this? I rule that out. Would such a philosophy propagate because somebody's stupid? I rule that out. Would such a philosophy propagate because somebody is trapped? I think that's worth thinking about. All right, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you later.